piecing together what this thing is has been kind of a chore. My first clue was about 2 weeks after I moved in. Petroglyph showed up in the concrete front step. Um, and it matches the land lay, matches the description of the thing, and gives a trailing where it lives, where they're trying to keep it away from people, because it looks like they're trying to manage this thing so it doesn't control. I don't think they're using it as a guard. I just heard some which I've heard probably 3 or 4 other times. Because one of the characteristics of this Sickleman, Ryuk, let me think, Ryujin? They gave me the name Ryujin. So I had to look up a few variations, make sure I had the pronunciation correct. That was the first time that young Guanch walked past me. That Sickle Man, that Dragon Man was coming up behind us. And I told him, it was when I was filming the marriage tree the first time. I didn't put my camera over to the right where he was, uh, but I caught him the second time. And I asked him as I exited because I told him, yeah, I know, whatever's coming uphill, something we need to avoid. He went, mm-hmm. And so I asked, and as I was exiting, at a pretty good clip, what do you call it? And he gave me Rogin, so Dragon Man. And then Dragon Man is part of the lore that my Japanese aunt, my Nipponese aunt, that taught me a little Ainu, spoke about. She said they were crab people. Uncle Long's stories say they were crab people. My grandmother's native stories say they're an ancient creature that has the ability to use hands like a sickle. So, Uncle Long's stories placed this particular cryptid back to roughly 145 million years ago. He said it was an animal that was present during um, his reincarnation dream thing. That was the location here. Uh, but that he felt his lore suggested it came probably from the end of the Jurassic period. It was a creature that had been alive during those times and had survived up into 145 million years ago. So the Native American side of the stories, we don't, grandmother's lore didn't place it that far back. The lore knew it was a very ancient creature and knew that it came from prehistoric times. But she didn't have a good set of time. When her lore stated that our tribes had interactions with these cryptids was around 45,000 years ago, right around the drought time here on this side of the planet, supposedly, that we were going through between 45 and 48,000 years ago. Towards the end of that, when we started to flourish and we'd made good relations with, the dog people, the Shulka-ook, um, which is a name you can look up in native lore. Same in Sioux Indian, if I remember right. They don't usually publish it, though. Because it's one of those, the concern is if you say the name, the creature will show up. No, it's just they know you're in the neighborhood. And they're not all bad. So, my grandmother's lore stated that as the ice was receding, uh, beginning to melt, it hadn't started a full-on sweat out melt yet, but the edges were starting to break, that sort of thing. These things came out of the ice, and started, coming after people, coming after the different tribes of people that were still living around the Coffee Belt area, before the ice finally melted about, 1,800 years ago. We're only, 1,200 years out of the Ice Age? Not a good place. We gotta warm up our planet, make it flourish again. Hey, Tato. Welcome. So the image that I put up for the thumbnail is an image I pulled offline because I was trying to find the trailhead so I could walk up, want to know what the road lay was, and accidentally ran across that image. That image is from 5 months ago. There's some peculiarities in the site. Sometimes the image is stated as new, and currently it's missing. You can't find that image. They put a image up from 2018, which also has that particular cryptid in it before he had the dog. And that was from 2 years ago. So now I know that the dog, whatever the heck that creature is, I'll give you a description of it too once I finish with the lore about this thing. Um, so there's been it is equipping itself is the best way you can put it, which means it's going to become bothersome potentially, and I think that's why the guanch up there, because the Skookum are lower down in the bottom of the gully. Then you've got two different families of guanch up on the ridge lines and up on the hillsides. And they don't let him go down to the Skookum region. They don't let him get down that far. They keep him along that ridge line and they try to keep him up on it. They don't like when he strays from the ridge line. So I think they're trying to keep him isolated. Now that can be for a couple of reasons. Either they realize he's another life form that needs assistance living, and they're trying to keep him fed and out of everybody's way, kind of like a pet, but they probably can't trust him as any kind of anything that should be left loose on its own. It has to be watched. It's too dangerous even to them. Uh, and I got to thinking about some of the things I've heard up there, and my grandma, or my Japanese aunt's lore about how the Namahugi would throw their children out for a night in the snow. Um, but the more I think about what I'm hearing, the more it seems like that's not a punishment. That might be a misconception in her lore. To me, now that I've heard it 3 times in the last 7 months, it's two girls. The very first 2 nights I was here, I heard some really bizarre stuff very close. And I heard the word Hanabana, and I heard a woman screaming, and no, and for help in English. But then I also heard her say something in Abeneke. So I knew it was, some sort of cryptid woman that was screaming for help. She was using English and her own language. So something was after her. The only time I've heard Hanabana has been up on the top of that hill, and that was the second time I went up with that thing. So Hanabana, shake like a leaf, or shake like a flower, uh, might actually be part of its language. So it definitely has a mix of Japanese and Tagalog as its language form. So the bizarre things I've been told about this particular cryptid. It is an upright walking, human like crab sloth, is the best way I can describe what I've been visually told about it. People, my grandmother, my Aunt Katsuko, and Uncle Long trying to describe this thing to me without having a picture. So it walks, it's got very long front arms, and it has two sharp, or it's got at least, right, it's got one on each side, supposedly. Most three of those stories all said it had one large, like, scissor-like hook that was a claw, like a crab claw looking device that it would snap. The sound it makes right before it goes after you, it will moo like a water buffalo. Moo! And it will be very deep, and then it will attack. So it's its feeding behavior. is what's being described, and it's stalking behavior. Because it will traverse on particular ridge lines, and it seems to only go along certain pathways. It doesn't really vary. And the other things that were told about it was it had a prehistoric plate on the top of its head, much like a dinosaur. What do they call them? A Paleocephalosaurus. Had that real thick bone ridge, and it supposedly had two ridge lines across the top. Its face is very round, has a crab-like structure to its mouth. Um, and then the stories kind of vary as to what its hair structure is. My grandmother's lore stated his hair structure was like an ostrich's. It had feathers, but they weren't quilled, they were just single hair feathers. Uncle Ong's stories said that they had long hair. His lore said it was long hair. And my Aunt Kutsuko's said it was haired, you know, with 3 or 4 inch long brown or black hair. And the foot description, if I remember right, it has a primate-like foot structure. I haven't seen its tracks personally, but if I remember right, that's what the lore suggested. But I can't be positive. I was about, well, I was 7 when my Uncle Ong told me about it. I was 10 when my Nipponese aunt told me about them. And I was 12 when my native grandmother told me about them. So the stories are all a little different, and I'm trying to give you like an overall mesh of what the 3 different versions of this story is claimed. So there are some bizarre characteristics about it. It also was suggested that this is a thing that lives in caves. It will use structures, and it does know how to build rudimentary structures. In Uncle Ong's lore, next to the 2 scissor-shaped hooks are 3 deciduous fingers, like a bat or uh, a horton bird from South America. They've got kind of a thumb and then a couple of hook fingers that sit on either side of the main claw thing. So, if those descriptions are correct in any way, it's a pretty peculiar thing. Um, and then the dog, my grandmother called that particular prehistoric dog uh, King of Dogs. And she claimed it had a burro's head. And I was about 10 when she told me about the dog. But she did also put it in association with Sickleman. She later, when I was 12, said, yes, this is the creature that will sometimes keep this thing as a pet. Her lore said that that was a dog that used to be common while we were going through the Ice Age. It was one of the dogs that could be befriended. It had, enough mentality to understand language and stuff, and could be taught to speak, supposedly, making it, sorry, my hand is going numb. I have nerve damage, so I can't hold stuff for a long time. So, anyway, the dog is a peculiar thing. She said it was really ancient. It came from uh, Africa, the other side of the world. It was part of the trade items, trade animals that were brought. So it was there probably 30,000, 48,000 years ago. It came here supposedly. Her lore described that thing as having a dog's body, very much like an Egyptian dingo, but bigger. Its full size is about 100, 120 pounds, supposedly. At least that's what her lore suggested. And that it had a head like a burro or a donkey. And it primarily walked on all fours, has a tail, but does have the ability to stand up, and it can run for a distance on its back legs, supposedly. And she said the way it attacks, it'll attack you like a burro. It will grab a hold of you. It will not let you go. It will shake the hell out of you. Um, and it will try to stomp on you. It still has that stomping behavior, but it ends up scratching the heck out of you because it's got dog feet. And, it can also pick up and, stand up and walk off with you because it has that ability. I've never seen one. This is the only one I've ever seen in a picture, and that's that thumbnail that's up. I'm going to see if they notify me about a copyright strike or not, otherwise I'm just going to leave it up. Because it's the only really good clear picture I've got of it, and that's not one I've taken, but it is relevant, because that's potentially a dangerous cryptid that needs to be identified, or identifiable, in my opinion. At the very least, you need to know what it sounds like, you need to know what it says. So, my grandmother's lore about the dog suggests that it could form really strong bonds with individuals that handled it, took care of it. And that it was very good at following commands, and that it ate both meat and grass, which kind of confused me. But then who knows? I mean, horses every once in a while will eat a mouse or a rat, so will any other equine-based critter. Protein's protein, and everything needs a little bit of it. So that's potentially the diet of the thing. I don't know, but I know what the lore says. So back to the big cryptid dude. According to all three, well, no, my Japanese aunt stories didn't get into that. She said they had language, and she called them part of the Namahugi types, or Gamahugi types, their forms of Bigfoot. But my Uncle Ong's lore and my native grandmother's lore suggested that they spoke. It also claimed that they were had that infrasound too, to a degree, and that they also had the ability to resonate the bone in their head to talk to you at distance. So it can make infrasound sounds evidently through the bone ridge. And that the bone ridge would be sometimes discolored. Skin or whatever's in that area would change color depending on season. And my grandmother's lore claimed that it is more animal-like, though it has language, and it only mates once a year. And I've got to think about the rest of her stories about it. I don't know if that's true or not. This is the lore, and I don't know if anybody else's tribe has similar lore, but I'd sure like to know. So anyway, those are the few descriptions about it that I'm aware of. I haven't been able to confirm all of those descriptions myself, other than, that picture potentially being the picture of it, and that is near where its cave is. There's a cave somewhere west of here, or at least or east of here, at least where it stays. And it does move between property lines to get up to where it goes hunting. So it traverses probably 3 miles. So if that thing's around that, I don't want to run into it. And I don't want to be its dinner. But it is interesting, and I'm glad that I was able to catch the language bites, because I think the Tagalog being spoken, Guape Kue Ka, you have a pretty head. I'm pretty sure that was its voice. And then the command, Huuyat, go, another person for you to chase dog, were both his language, what he was saying. So at least I was able to catch those a couple of times. So there's some vocalizations, if you want to call them, potentially from him. And that odd sound, gurgle, yowl, whatever the heck it was with the human ending, still unidentified. I don't know if it's related to the dog or related to some other flipping thing up there. Because there's a likelihood there's a lot of stuff in our hiking areas. So let me throw some glasses on, see if I can get a few questions answered. Oh, and the glyph that showed up, I'm going to go ahead and record that if I have enough light today, and I'll post it, show it to you, because it's uh, really nicely done. And it's, if you know how to read the iconography of the petroglyph, it's very understandable. Thankfully, that's part of the Mississippi River bed stuff that my native grandmother taught me. Alright, so let me go back up. Let me see if I can answer some questions for everybody. Okay. Yeah. The really nice thing about you, Frankie, is uh, you're exposing yourself for what you are. That's why freedom of speech is so important. Public forum. Everybody knows what you are now. Okay, Chilo, always wanted to ask you about cryptids, uh, honor in the sea, like mermaids and others. Yeah, my grandmother claimed those were very definitely real. Agalong also, and so did my Japanese aunt. They're also octopus cryptids uh, recorded in the Japanese myths that will take human form. Interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Hell, thank you, Auntie. Hey, Sky, how you doing? No worries, Auntie. I think it's important to share this knowledge. Thank you, Sky. Yeah, Frankie, you are in the wrong place. No kidding. Okay. I understand that, Sky. I'm not open-minded for the Frankies of the world. No, but they sure do expose themselves really nicely in public, and they don't even realize they're doing it to themselves. Yeah, those are just the bad kids in the classroom. They always have been. Yeah, right? That's a good one. Excuse me. Oh, so let's see if we can get into... Yes, Auntie. Came a little later, or late, and you were speaking about Sicklemen right now, or... Yeah, Moi-ook. Both. Sickleman supposedly would also keep a funny-looking dog. So just trying to go over both descriptions, the loric understanding of them, and the characteristics that they have, and how they hunt, and what they do, at least according to the lore. I've never seen it personally, so I couldn't vouch for the information, but so far the lore that I've been exploring doesn't seem to be off in any way. And I think that the Japanese that was caught up in those sound recordings might have been one of the Bigfoot up there, one of the guanche, because I've actually caught several guanche, and it's the bigger ones that stay near that other cryptid. The younger ones that are 4 or 5 years old, they leave the area, so it's a danger, and that's known danger to them. So that's a learning experience. You can actually survive pretty well out in the woods if you learn how to communicate with a good sabe. Your forest brothers will actually help you out and guide you and protect you. That's also ones that have been tapping at me at very close distance. They've been getting up close to make sure that I'm okay. And it's not an aggressive behavior. They're trying to make a barrier between that thing and the people that walk up there. So this is their daily process while some of their family members are out hunting. Some of them are managing this thing and keeping it away from people, keeping it isolated. Hey, Cosmic. Wild man, checking in. I'll be eating and listening a bit. Right on. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that my sound got turned down. I just turned it up. Okay. Hmm. Oh, thank you, Cosmic. I would mod you if I knew how. Somebody freaking email me and tell me how. I haven't found any dang videos online that tell me basic information about this stupid program or app. Everybody always gives you information on how to run it from your computer, not your flipping phone. Yeah, I'm aware I need a mod, but I need to know how to add one. I don't know how. Tell me how, and I'll freaking add you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to draw what's more lore-like. I'll make a recording of the, little petroglyph out there and walk you through the iconography of it, let you know how it works and what it's talking about. That way, when you see stuff like this, you might have an understanding or at least a better clue as to what you're looking at or potentially what it might be saying. And I'm going to try to start including more educational pieces on trail glyphs as opposed to kana and kanji. Because kana and kanji are completely different than the trail language that Native Americans used, where you're delineating a path and you're describing an area, showing where there are sits and where you cross through, etc. So it's a little different thing to look for, and it's something that can make you more aware of what's around you. But this cryptid hasn't always been there. I have gone up into some of these paths back in the 80s and 90s with friends going hiking. A couple of times we went up at night, and that thing wasn't in those paths at that time. I didn't hear any of his language or the thing with the dog. And the suggestion is the dog's probably not been here but 5 or 6 months, so it's a new addition to the area because the pictures I've managed to pull are show that to be the case potentially. Because the older pictures from 2 years ago don't, or 2018 don't have a dog in them, and then the one this year from August 4th, I think it was. Uh, it had the dog in it, and that now is the picture that's buried. It's kind of why I put it up online. So yeah, if it's a crab, it's going to eat anything and everything. Because, well, crab's diet's pretty much garbage. They're like a garbage bin. Maybe it's something they keep around to dispose of shit. I don't know. But they do definitely manage it, and they don't like it getting too close to you. So, I don't know much about its diet. I do know that it was reported in native lore to be a human eater. It would come after you, and it would munch on you. It'd hold you there and eat you. So, I wouldn't want to run across it. And I'm glad it's being managed. and I don't have much other information on it because I can't remember it or it just isn't there. If I do recall anything else about these things, because it's been 50 years, dang near 48 years since I had to think about any of these stories. They're not something that's in the front of my mind. I have to actually sit there and think about stuff and go, okay, how does it relate to this one? And yeah, so this is one of those identifications I finally potentially found, an unknown cryptid that I'd never had a chance to see. I'd never been taken to a location where it was. I've only had descriptions of it given, and then just having that random chance photo uh, really helped me think about, well, that kind of fits this description, so it's potentially that. I have not seen it visually yet, and I don't think I want to. I might go up there and sit where I can use a pair of binocs and just watch the hilltop for a while. Uh, I think that might be nice. But I don't think I want to be in the grounds with it. And I don't know. I'm not going to risk that shit. And that's the other reason why I was always taught by my dad, if you're going in and you're searching for something potentially dangerous, which is the assumption I always make when I'm doing my tracking and my scouting. I'm potentially searching for something dangerous. My father always taught me to do a sally in and a sally out. You go in a couple hundred feet or you go in a quarter mile, depending on what you hear in the area. Maybe up to a half mile, but you don't go any further. You go in, you listen, and you figure out what's there. Figure out if anything's following you. And if you get any signs that something's following you, stalking you, or in any way trying to intervene or intersect on your path, that's time for you to back out of that area. And I've always taken my father's advice on that uh, because it's good advice. Okay. Thank you guys. Yeah, I need to know how to do that. And I think I might have to upgrade this phone. It's only got 32 gigs of memory on it, so I need something with more like 50 gigs on it. Thank you, Angie, for the good question. Were Sicklemen and Moi-ook large in structure? So the descriptions that my grandmother and Uncle On gave were that it was around 8 foot. It could be up to about 8 foot in height, even hunched over. Normally they were 6-ish, 7-ish foot in height, but they could get rather large. That's the Sickleman, the Royden. So, and wide. The descriptions all say it was a very wide-looking creature. It had very wide shoulders to it, and kind of round-bodied, stayed low to the ground. It liked to scoot a lot on the ground. That's another reason why I was showing the movement patterns, so you get an idea. It kind of shuffles according to the lore. But it does have the ability to stand, it does have the ability to run, and it can move quickly on all fours. But it will have a funny divot point in its front running pattern from the knuckle. So I haven't seen any tracks from this thing yet. I haven't tried to go anywhere near it. But those are potential descriptions of some of the potential track type. And it was supposed to be rather heavy. It was supposed to be, you know, enough weight that 6 or 8 men were needed to roll it over or pick it up. So it's suggesting it's probably 700 to 800 pounds, maybe 900 pounds, depending on how big the men are, how strong they are. And then the dog, the Moi-ook, my grandmother said it'd be roughly 100 pounds, 120 pounds. When it stood up, it would be about 4.5, 5 foot tall, and was very much dog-like in most of its behaviors. But there had been some that were bigger, but it seemed, average man size was about what it grows into. Uh, but and that you at one point in time used to keep them too. But the biggest problem is once they bite you, they don't let go of you. They'll just shake the hell out of you. So they were kind of dangerous if they decided not to be well-behaved dogs. We'd put them in the stew pot because if they couldn't behave, it was dangerous to keep them. More dangerous than a normal dog. At least that's what we thought and how we dealt with them. Yeah, it'd be really, really nice to have a recording a 360 that works off an SD card. Because dang, I'm pretty sure I could get some pretty good stuff. Part of it's just knowing where they cross, like the juvenile up there that crosses by the marriage tree. I'm pretty sure he's going back to his bed system and going back to his place where they're more large. Uh, so that's the other thing to learn is where the land lay is, how these things move around in their land lay. Where do they hang out during the day? Where do they go at night? And this cryptid, this Sickleman, he seems to go east to bed down while the rest of the group that manages him or keeps him away from people up there beds down to the south. So he doesn't seem to stay in the same place. He comes to the area and he crosses roads to get there. I'm just wondering what time of day he crosses. As far as I can tell in the pictures, it's around noon, 1 o'clock too. And I know there's a pull-out area I can sit in and watch. So I'm thinking maybe I'll go take a sit in my vehicle and see if I can find him sitting in the woods close by the road. Because that might be a good potential where I could get pictures of him and not be in, physical jeopardy. They'd have to pull my vehicle apart. The other thing is he's not, according to the lore, they are kind of slow mentally. So they're not, it takes them a while to figure out how to circumvent you. As you can tell, it took him 3 weeks to figure out he needs to cut me off on the path lower down. So they're not intellectually the quickest thinkers, according to the lore, and I think that's kind of exemplified by the prolonged movement pattern. And he doesn't follow me up. He waits until he sees me, and then he tries to follow me down and, get below me. And, he makes way more sound than the other cryptids up there. The Guanch, they're quiet as heck. You barely hear them, but this guy, you can hear him. He's definitely got a movement pattern that's noticeable. Really, Andy? Same weight, etc., as the Mackenzie River wolf. Interesting. I didn't realize there was a mule-headed dog up there. Well, that kind of gives credence to the lore then. That's interesting. Huh, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing a GoFundMe because they only take, what, 3%? So 30 cents on $10 as their fee, and it can be, put straight into an account. I don't need any online banking or anything like that to utilize that. And, it's automatically reported with taxes if I'm searching for an amount that's above 10,000. Uh, so that's something I was hoping to be able to do. I need a phone that's got more memory in it so I can actually run the apps that I need. That's part of my biggest problem. I gotta upgrade this thing next week. Hopefully, I'll have the funds to do that. Yes, Annie Ange. Well, McKinsey actually isn't far from here because I'm down in the Willamette Valley. So I'm wondering maybe the McKinsey River Wolf is a tradable good item along an old trade route. Because Blue River area, that's one of the old trade routes, uh, native traditional trade routes, and it comes straight down into this valley. So maybe that's where this thing got the dog from. Thank you, Sky. Yeah, I'm thinking I can. I need an app to run on my phone, and I'm sitting at uh, 25 gigs used out of 32, and it seems like every time and I just dropped this, I just dropped this phone pretty good, and it's been doing the whole glitch thing. So I think ought to just replace this phone and get the get stuff up and going that way. But I gotta wait till payday because it's gonna cost me a little bit that I don't currently have. I've been trying to save my money, and I'm stingy. I will wait. Angie, why do animals get bigger when you go north? Does that make sense to anyone? You would think the lack of resources would make animals smaller in Arctic climates. Well, you actually have to have more fat in order to survive in colder weather. It's part of the reason why your body gets bigger. It allows you to retain more heat. The smaller the animal, the quicker it dies of cold. And some regions of Alaska, Canada, etc., get 50 below zero. So you have to have a lot of weight in order to survive that. You have to have a good insulator pad. You got to have a good big bone structure, so you have a lot of blood coursing through your body to keep warm. So it's the environment that causes those animals to be larger. Because they're the only ones that can literally live in those environments. They don't have, adaptations to cold. Like the blue frog of Canada. It can freeze solid every year in the tundra areas and not be harmed because it basically has antifreeze in its body as its blood. And it's, natural for that particular frog to have that adaptation because of where it lives. Hey, Jerry Outlaw. Oh, you mean McKinsey River in Alaska? Well, there's a McKinsey River down here too, and I'm aware of the McKinsey River in Alaska. One of my great aunts used to pan off of that back in the, what, 1914? And that region's got some bizarre stuff in it. Uh, my great aunt had a few stories about that. Yep. I don't think this thing has a port for an SD card. It's a pretty cheap little thing. Oh wow, Phil. Yeah, your horse is down near Applegate, Oregon. She does trail rides for my great friend Tess. Applegate rides. Yeah, that's a beautiful area too. Oh wow, I didn't realize 100 below in Fairbanks. Yeah, I knew it went to 50, but I don't doubt it. 100. Yeah, you gotta be pretty tough to survive that kind of climate. All right. So I think that's it for questions. So, sorry it's not a longer show, but I just wanted to try to go over the little bit of the myth that I could remember about this thing. Um, and I'll try to draw what, the lore concept of what this thing potentially might look like and try to, you know, enhance what that photo looks like. It's pretty grainy. It's, and kind of, it was blurred out. They were trying to. There were two other things sitting right next to it on the roadway, and that's what the fuzz is. They airbrushed that stuff out. So potentially there were a pair of guants sitting along the roadside trying to keep that thing in place. Again, probably just managing, and it might just be their garbage disposal, so to speak. I mean, because if it is a crab-like creature, that would be a good use for it. But yeah, I definitely every once in a while hear something that's suggestive to me that they're trying to keep it away from other people and away from uh, trail systems up there. They don't like it getting close. They don't like it doing stupid stuff. So they're managing it in some way. And it's actually, these sorts of peculiar cryptids. Um, and, they're the ones that we need to understand probably the most, because either they're just incredibly ancient leftover life forms, which there are probably very few of them left if that is the case. Some of them might be, something that's worth trying to preserve. This thing can be managed and it can't, you know, with proper management, it won't be bad towards us. But what a heck of a thing to have for a freaking garbage disposal. Yeah, what all can it eat if it's a crab-like creature? It might want to be one of those cryptids that actually does eat dung, for instance, because crabs do. And peculiarness. You know, the natural order of things. What is it? Do we really know? Because I'm beginning to wonder with all the lore and how stuff matches so seamlessly in some cases, even though, completely freaking unaware of this shit anymore. Anyhow, unless you guys have any questions, I think I'm going to wrap this up in about 10 minutes. Because, I've said my piece about what I think I understand of this particular cryptid, and a few of the potential hypotheses about it. I don't know. It'd be nice to be able to throw a drone in there, or put a camera up high, because I don't think that thing would actually notice that sort of thing, nor care. And it does seem to follow a very, same path all the time. So that might be one you could actually catch on a trail camera if you had one in the in some place there that was, viable to get footage. Especially this time of year, because there's not a lot of cover for it to be, other than the moss covered branches and stuff up there and a few tall grasses. There's not a lot of major foliage except some berry vines and stuff. So it's going to be a little more exposed. and it's big enough that, if you had a drone or something, you could probably get in right above it and take some pretty good footage of it. So if anybody's got a drone and lives anywhere in the Willamette Valley and wants to go sit in a parking lot with me and see if we can fly a drone up there, I'd be all for it. You're welcome to keep your footage. I just want to know what this thing really looks like. So yeah, I'm kind of laid back about my perspective on stuff. I went in the other gully, which it's also been in, and which again is across another roadway and another mile and a half, 2 miles away from the upper hillside that I've gotten so many language bites from. So it goes quite a ways through there. So anyhow, oh cool, Annie, that'd be awesome. Awesome, cooking a feast for the family, Phil. That's good. Yeah, no, I think if we s- start thinking about cryptids as just different people with different habits and different things that they do, some of it is very much like that. Then there are those that are potentially dangerous. Face eaters, face peelers. The red bone people. Those are ones you got to be really careful of. But then there are potentially some life forms that are just you know managed, they're taken care of, they're utilized as pets or utilized as a guard, or because there are groups that use dogmen in this area as guards. Seen that more than once in this valley. But there are ways, you watch what the cryptid does. The problem is people don't understand that they're not just monkeys living in the woods. They actually use some brain power, and they obviously know how to herd animals because if they're managing it the way they're in the sits that I'm showing, they're definitely managing that thing. They're skirting its behavior. So maybe that would give us an opportunity if we can understand the behaviors of these things a little better. Maybe it'll give us an opportunity to be able to actually start start being able to do some research. Think about different ways you can get into an area where it doesn't put you in jeopardy. But once you understand the land lay and the movements, and you've got a half mile or less that you need to go into an area to collect some evidence, let's figure out how to do it. Because that to me makes more sense than going out in the middle of the night banging on trees and screaming your head off. To me, it's, figure out the animal's movement pattern, figure out where it lives, figure out what it eats, figure out what it does, figure out what its behavior is, and then map its behavior. And once you understand its movement behavior, you've got clear line of sight on it. It's just like hunting. It's all you're doing is you're just figuring out where a creature is moving and what it's doing, and then how to intersect it, where to get to it at. And I think if we took that approach, you know, we might get better results. We might have an opportunity to get some results, actually, uh, because we place ourselves in a situation where we are learning about it. The biggest problem is there's so much missing lore, and people don't have that background to understand. These guys are good. This is how they'll tell you. This is how they will talk to you. These guys are bad over here. This is what they'll do. This is what they'll talk like. We don't have that understanding anymore, and that's unfortunate because that makes for a lot of conjecture and a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of not enough knowledge to know how to go in and interact with them, observe them, or understand what you're seeing when you're there, and not be freaked out. Not be focused on the wrong thing. Because if I were focused on taking pictures of the guanche walking off into the woods, I've got, something bigger and badder walking up behind me, and it's not their fault. That would be my bad because I wasn't paying attention to what that creature is, and that they're trying to keep it away. And you could very easily misread that exiting as luring when it's just him trying to get to safety. And that's obvious because, as soon as that thing shows up, the young ones walk off down that area. And it's consistent behavior. So they're leaving for safety reasons. Nice, Phil. It's really good when your wife doesn't want to go out and get a meal elsewhere. Means you're keeping her happy. Same can be said the other way around, though. Couples got to keep each other happy, especially with food and relaxation. Those are things that are good to share with each other. Builds good family. Awesome, Joy. I'm glad you're writing a book. Okay, Auntie. I have to fly. Beautiful people. Nice chatting with you all. Wishing you good things to all. Bye for now, Isa. Take care, Angie. Well, Phil, um, I know that the ones that were messing with me here, the Skukkum, the ones that I've been learning to trade with, they were testing me. They were testing to see if I could understand their knock communications. Then they tested me to see if I could read a kana. Then they tested me to see if I knew how to trade. And then they laid down kanji for me, something more complex, book. So I had to prove that I could read that. Uh, that group was testing me on my adult skills. Do I know how to survive, and do I know how to communicate as an adult cryptid? That's the same kind of stuff I learned on my turnout. But then you'll have the dog man that I lived near for 7 months. He was testing my strength and my steadfastness. Steadfastness. He tried to scare the living hell out of me every freaking chance he got. He would he'd turn off my propane on my propane tank when I was cooking a meal, because I had a propane stove. I had lights and power from my refrigerator. Then you go down and you throw the breaker switch in the barn and shut off my power, so I'd have to walk down in the middle of the night past him. That was all testing me. He'd rattle my front door, and even if it were unlocked, he wouldn't open it. He was just trying to scare me. He'd take the windows off the yurt, look in the windows, and give me that hyena laugh. Yeah. He'd reach for my dog. It was all to see what I would do. He tried to. He'd throw stuff at me, and he was good enough. He could throw through a 4 foot by 3 foot high hole underneath the uh, front patio area, because I had a 10 foot front patio that I kept my wood under. And then, he'd make it through that with a piece of gravel. And I think he was thrown from about 40 feet away. So he was accurate, very accurate with stuff. Uh, He'd try the door handle on the outhouse when you were in the outhouse. He tried to knock the posts out from underneath the yurt a couple of times. It was all to see what kind of a rise he could get out of me if I were to be scared, if I would quake in my shoes like a flower. Um, and once I proved that I wasn't afraid of him, because I started sneaking up on him in the daytime. I figured out where the heck he was sleeping in the afternoon. I go sneak up on him. Prove to him he wasn't the only one that could do it. And I took my dog a couple times with me, just to prove that she wasn't afraid of him either. And I let him know, she's adopted. So he was testing. He was testing to see if I was going to be afraid of anything. And then once I proved that, it took 5 months of him harassing the living hell out of me, um, then he finally stopped. He brought his family, which were a total, it was him and 10 adult, I don't know how many kids, because the kids weren't with him that night. But there were 10 adult Oma and then him. So he was either adopted into the group, or he was functioning as a medicine person, or he was functioning as a guard in some way. And the reason why I say all of those three is because he also wore face paint occasionally, and he seemed to have a very relaxed nature about him. Because whenever I would go out, to put my window back up or turn my gas back on, he'd be nonchalantly leaning against a tree. He was messing with me, and I knew it. So I just messed with him back. It's their way of testing whether or not you have courage and that you have reason. And I'd often say hi to him, or I'd look at him and tell him, yeah, lap it up, furball, you're being an asshole. I just talk to him like a person. And I think that startled him. And, the one that that would chase the freaking vehicles around this area, I gave him a baboon smile one night just to see what he'd do after he tried my door handle on my vehicle. He looked all shocked. Oh my God. Looked puzzled and stopped chasing my vehicle. So a lot of the things that I've been doing over my life has been trying to test these things back and understand what are they actually doing. And the old female, when I first met her, I'd been tracking her. I'd been tracking her for about a year and a half. She hadn't let me see her. I'd see the top of her head every once in a while. I'd see evidence of where she was passing through that area. Uh, and then one day I'm down on one of the lower trails and I find a whole lot of side tracking along the pathway. It's very clearly her track. And it led me, there was enough evidence. She led me a half mile up into the hillsides and up into a ravine between two mountaintops. And she led me there to basically introduce herself, say hi. So I almost walked past her. She was 10 feet up off the side of the hiking trail, sitting in fucking plain sight. And I was so busy looking at the fucking ground. Oh wow, another track. I almost walked past her. She oofed at me to let me know she was there. I turned around. I said, oh, hi. Yeah, you don't eat me. I won't eat you, and it's all good. Have a great day. Scared me, startled me, but I wasn't going to show any fear to her. And I walked on down the path. After that, whenever I saw her, I'd say hi because she was in that area a lot. So I'd just find where she was at and I would say hi. And, it took another 6, 8 months. Next thing I know, I was able to crawl up next to her and sit down. She'd let me talk to her. She's kind of like Jen Jen in her behavior. She was really a peaceful, quiet individual. And I found out that her duty, she was a matriarch of the family, and one of her duties was to be a matchmaker for for the Oma family she was the chieftainess of. So I would sit with her and watch the marriage hut. She would tell me, oh no, that couple's not going to get together. That wouldn't be a good match. Boy's too grabby or too crabby. The girl's too submissive. She can't voice around this boy. So there were decisions about behavior, what makes a good marriage. And so it's experiences like that that people don't have, that don't allow them to understand the nature of some of these people. And she taught me some very interesting things. Like one day she was handling what they call a pussy caterpillar. It's a fuzzy-haired, long-haired caterpillar from the northwest. It's got neurotoxin in those little fuzzball things, and they are deadly as hell to handle. They'll kill you. That old mom woman can handle one. It didn't hurt her. She was letting it crawl around on her hand. So her genetics is immune to that particular caterpillar's neurotoxin. And she let me know how I could touch it safely only with the back of my fingernail, meaning it wasn't safe for me, and she knew it. So she knew my genetic inability to handle that thing too. And she functioned as kind of a medicine person in the group. She had a lot of lore, a lot of knowledge, and she also built a lot of the structures in that area. When she was shot, because that's what happened to her, that group's ability to maintain itself in a more tooled system of existence went away. She was the one that knew most of that kind of thing. She knew how to make very good structures. She knew how to bend arches. She knew how to make woven structures. Uh, but a lot of the individuals around her didn't have the skills or couldn't learn it. Some of it was because they weren't as smart. Uh, Others of it was just because the hand shape. The male's hands are not as pliable as the female's hands, and once they get older, individuals' hands are sometimes not as pliable. So it makes it hard for them to pick up, with great big sausage fingers, it's really hard to pick up small items. So their tool use goes down. Their tools have to be bigger, and then the items that they're working with, material-wise, has to be bigger simply because their hands are bigger. And those are things that we don't think about as trackers. The size of the tool, the shape of things and whatnot can also give you a delineation as to how big the animal is. And in looking for the peel off on any tool, the bark will be peeled off where a tool or a branch or anything's been touched or handled by something or somebody with either a hand or a hand-like foot. So those are some of the things I also look for when I'm out tracking. What kind of just visual evidence can I note? So those are some things to think about when you're out trying to do some tracking. But I'm glad that I got the language bites that I did of this thing. I'm glad that I got the couple of guanche photoed and out there. So there's a little bit of proof there's some Sabe Bigfoot in the area. I wish I would have had a chance and would have a chance to get a picture of this other cryptid. I really like it in my picture book, but I don't trust it. So I'm going to probably try to observe it from a distance with some binoculars for a while and see if I can at least see some bushes moving or anything like that. And I might go down at a lower point where it's more open, because I don't think this thing is going to expose itself during the day, I hope. Because there is one really low down point where I might be able to safely sit and catch something in the bush line and still have enough open area to, if it's a slow mover, get out of the way. But I'm going to give it some rest. I don't, it's been pretty consistent in following behavior, so I'm going to give it some time to forget about me and see if, or go back over to the opposite gully. Maybe I'll be in that gully when it's not there, which means I could get maybe some more of the guanche language or maybe some more pictures of the guanche over there. But the ones on that second western peak, yeah, mapped that area out pretty good. So there are some good places I can get some footage if I can just get it at a distance. I might have to take my camera up there and see if I can do some zoom ins and use my tripod and just see if I can isolate some areas. But I'll have to do that when the weather is not rainy, because I don't have any kind of a reliable cover for it. My camera not to be destroyed in the rain, so I'm going to have to wait for a good day. But that's about where I'm going to leave that one, because I'm not comfortable with being up around that thing. Maybe it'll change its movement pattern throughout the year. Maybe it'll stay further down. If that's the case, then I'll go back in. Because sometimes, critters do have a different movement pattern depending on the time of year. So if I can be in that area and be around the guanche while it's not there, that would be ideal. Because they also seem to be rather talkative. So that's a potential. But I'm going to have to map out some more of its movements, see if it's always there, etc. And watch the area for a little bit. So remember, guys, sally in, sally out. Don't go in too deep. If you got something that's predatory in an area, it will come find you. Make sure you're not there. That's my advice. And thank you guys for listening to this, and I really appreciate you all. I'm glad for all the new subscribers. Yeah, there's going to be a little premiere-ish kind of documentary with several individuals in it. And one of my clips from, or a couple of my clips from my interview are going to be in that, and that'll be this spring from sometime, I think March, April. And then that'll be from Flash Beauty. And then somewhere in the middle of the summer, towards maybe the latter part of the summer, my documentary will be out after they've done their magic with it. So uh, that's an update for you guys on that. It's not in my control, but I trust them. I think they've got a very good handle on what they're doing with their documentaries. And I think they're definitely looking for the truth. So there's that. Yeah, if I could in any way get out in the field full time, I think I could really come up with some good stuff for you guys. Because, once you understand how to move around these things, what they do, it's not too hard to map them out. So if I'm not going up into that area, I might go over back into the Oma area. I know they don't keep any unusual pets, they never have. And I know their area really well. It's where the old Oma woman was. It was one of my teachers. And they're not necessarily the most vocal, but occasionally they'll talk. Maybe I can get one of their juveniles to say hi. I'll ask for a volunteer. But I'm going to give that upper ridge line behind where I live a bit of a rest. Because that particular Sickleman cryptid or Roygen, whatever the heck it really is, I don't really trust its behavior. And that's about all on that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh yeah, sound bites. If any of you have any kind of sound language representations on either video or audio, there's an individual subscriber, uh, Josh, who is a musician, and he has contact at SATHURXY49. I'll add this link to this live. He's interested in working with any kind of samurai chatter soundbite in recordings anybody has that they're willing to share. And he's got a slowed down version of the Sierra sounds up on his page, which I'm working with. I'm going to go through and double check all the tap sequences, make sure I have everything written out very clearly with that. And probably going to have him mess with the sound a little bit here and there, because there's some stuff I still can't quite hear the way I'd like to be able to hear it for clarity reasons. So he's got a very good background in audio, and he's willing to help people, compile stuff and take a listen to stuff like that. And I think we might be able to start building some sort of language reference, or at least build some more understanding about some of these things. If we got somebody willing to help out, you know, catalog those kinds of things, or at least facilitate it, easier listening. You can put up something that has the hiss taken out of it, so you can actually hear what's going on. He has the ability to scrub those sounds out and do that sort of thing. So that's a thing he might be interested in. He's mentioned it, that he'd like to play with any of the sound recordings that anybody has of language, samurai chatter. And I would be very interested in hearing that sort of thing too. So if any of you are comfortable with sharing that sort of stuff, please get a hold of him, and I will go ahead and make sure to put his information on this live once I'm out. I'll edit. So I think that's the last announcement I have. And I think that's about all I want to say about this particular show. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I appreciate all of the enthusiasm. Sorry it's not the easiest for people to be in here, chatting while there are trolls running around. But it is what it is for now. Anyhow, uh, you have a great day, and I will put up the little bit of information about the petroglyph. I might have to do that tomorrow. It looks like the light's getting a little low, unless I can mess with my phone and make the brightness better on the record. So I'll describe that and go through that image with you. And that's, that image is what made me decide that, yeah, it's probably a Sickleman, because it's that image. That's that's what it's telling you. So I'm gonna go out and try to record that, and I'll post that after this. And I've got one more video from up on that hillside where the Sickleman is, getting into some of the trail language, and I'm going to try to map out the translation for you. So I'll either put up the translation first and then connect the second video to it, or I'll put the primary, video, the last one I recorded up there on the hillside, and then put the translation in and try to get them linked together so that you can see the relationship between the two sets of images, so you can get a better understanding of what trail language looked like. Now, the trail language that they're utilizing, that the Guanche up there are utilizing, is exactly the same as Native American trail language. Some tribes still use it today. Some of the Alaskan tribes, some of the southern tribes still utilize the same trail language. So for some natives, it's just going to be like, oh yeah, I already know that. But it'll be a good introductory for people who aren't aware of it. It'll give you some idea of how subtle the language is, because usually you lay these patterns out in grass, or you lay them out in really fine little twigs or straw or something inconspicuous. You make it look like it's nothing. And this is the old-fashioned way. How Native Americans used to communicate on the ground between tribal members when you're going out hunting or foraging, and you've got other people around in your area, or you've got a border area where another tribe is maybe friendly or not friendly. It's a way of communicating without having to scare each other's game away. You don't have to holler or talk to each other or yell at each other in any way. You just leave down the trail sign, the trail glyph, the patterns. Your buddy comes up and goes, oh yeah, you're going down this trail and you're hunting there and you're sitting in this blind. All right, I know where you're at. Or don't go there, this is the sort of thing that's going on. You got something dangerous here. Those kinds of communications are also in that kind of trail patterning, that like language, trail language, basically. My grandmother called it, the daily news. It's how natives used to share information with each other. That's how she described it. And, she'd have time lay out little trail images for me and tell me to go find them in her yard and tell me what they meant. Tell her what they meant. Could I tell her back exactly what they meant? Make sure I understood and I knew the places to look, where I might find that sort of thing. So she was kind of training my mind to watch for this sort of thing, and to make it into a bit of a game for a 10-year-old, so it would be easier for me to, learn it and interact with my world instead of just learning it always on paper, which she did a lot of that too, especially when it came to like the finer images, and the fact that a triangle represents a house or a mountain, but you've got a fork that also represents a mountain. One is always laid on the ground, and the other one's always put up in a tree because it's visual. The trident you can see for a very, very long time in a tree, but it would be harder to bend that marker into a, triangle for mountain. So, it's two different symbols for the same meaning, and why they're different is because of the way they're placed and the distance they're meant to be seen in. So triangles used for mountain or house, typically on the ground, but you can still have the representation of a trident if the individual is referring to a mountain as being their home, for instance. They'll lay that down instead of just a triangle. So there are things that you have to understand about the inner workings of the language, but it's not hard. It's contextual, like most of these ancient forms of communication. It's contextual, but at the same time, once you start getting an idea and an understanding of some of the basic symbols and elements, It's not hard to see how they fit together, and it's not difficult to understand them. It's pretty self-explanatory in a lot of ways, and it opens up an interesting thing too, because once you start learning a little bit of this, uh, you know, old Mississippi riverbed language and the communication forms that Native Americans used, you're going to be able to look at petroglyphs and other stuff, cave paintings and stuff, and you're going to go, oh, I know what some of that means. And that's going to be an eye-opener for you, because you're going to find these little patterns are kind of throughout history and throughout different cultures. And, they might take a little bit different form because of the region, but a lot of this stuff remains the same no matter what culture, because it's all from a very ancient time. So, I'm out. You have a great day, and hope you guys have fun. And I'm going to go record that, put it up, let you know what the petroglyph's like, and its basic meaning. Have a good one.